Today we're going to be making the microwavable bag for cooking your potatoes in. You have to use everything 100% cotton. So the thread is 100% cotton, the fabrics are 100% cotton, but most importantly, because some people get mixed up on this, you need to have 100% cotton batting. If you bought batting and it says all cotton or 100% cotton, if it doesn't say it's microwavable, it's 100% cotton fibers, but they put it together with, I call it glue. They put it together with some glue. So you have to look at the bag and it'll say it's really 80% or 70% or something like that. So there's two kinds of microwavable batting that I know of. Wrap and Zap is one of them, WRAPN and ZAP, Wrap and Zap. And the other one I just tried out from Bossel, and I'm not sure if it's Bossel or Bosel, and it's called Quickie Wrap. And you see right here, microwavable. And the Wrap and Zap will tell you the same thing. So this says microwavable bag for potatoes, corn, and other vegetables. So make sure that's what you have. It seems to be, it's a little thinner because it doesn't have those fillers in it, and it's very soft. If you've ever felt bamboo batting, it feels real soft like that. So I think this is a good batting also if you want to do something that's, you need it to be thinner, something small, because this comes in the packages, and Wrap and Zap is about the same, probably the same size. So it's 45 inches by 36 inches. So 45 inches, so it's like a yard of fabric, close to a yard of fabric. Okay, so this opens up here, potatoes go in here. When you do your potatoes, you're going to wash your potatoes, and generally it's like 2 potatoes. I put a bunch of little ones in, but I'd say 2 because you don't want to cook it so long that this gets really, really hot. So you wash the potatoes, you leave them wet, don't dry them. And I just wrap, and I don't really wrap it. I just fold a paper towel around them just to keep the inside cleaner in case you didn't get all of the stuff off. And you just put them in, close this up, and start with about 5 minutes on your microwave. You know, everybody's microwave is different. And of course, you don't want to leave your microwave when you've got, you know, stuff that's not normally the stuff you put inside. You don't have to put it on a plate. Most everyone, I think, on their microwave now have that glass plate, like the carousel thing. So you can just set it on that. I did add a little hanger to it, just in case you wanted to hang it. And they're going to be very hot when they come out. So it's like a steamed potato. So the skin is not that hard, crusty, which I kind of like sometimes, like you have in the oven. It's more like when you go to the restaurant and they do that burst the potato open kind of thing. They're more like that. So I got a little picture here of one that I did. So I kind of burst it open. It was so hot I could barely hang on to it. Then I stuck a little butter on it. And then after I took the picture, I just thought I should eat it. So I did. It was really good. Then we had to have more because they were that good. They were very tasty. Very tasty. I don't know what made the difference. I guess because it's kind of steamed instead of either boiled or baked in the oven. So fabric, we have a piece of fabric for the outside and a piece of fabric. And I just used muslin because that's 100% cotton for the inside. And the piece of the outside fabric, inside fabric, and batting are all the same size. And you could make this different sizes if you want to. The loop is about 2 inches by 6 inches. And we'll probably go ahead and maybe we'll do our loop first and get that done. So I'm going to set this up here. Oh, and don't let me forget, this bag is made differently. And you can, after the class, I'll tell you what's in here that I made. It was really good and it smells good now. So let's get started. So I'm going to just set that there. Gonna move my iron over so I don't set anything on fire. So we have our loop fabric. We have the batting, outside fabric, inside fabric. Now this one I did just a little quilting on because I knew some of you might ask about doing it, and I just did some lines. So that's what we're gonna. Can you see the line right there? And then there it is there and there. And that's just holding the batting to the fabric. Now, when you do the quilting, you're going to take away the back fabric, the lining fabric. So let's just have our front fabric, or our main fabric, with the batting underneath. And when we're doing the quilting, you want the batting underneath so it feeds better with the feed dogs and it's not dragging from your foot. So in this case, I have in a Microtech 80, I believe. You could use a Microtech 80 or even a Top Stitch 80 is fine. I don't often use a universal needle because a universal needle doesn't have a sharp point to it. So on my machine, I'm going to put, because I'm going to do some quilting, I'm going to put my stitch length to 3.0. And I'm going to have my pivot on my machine. So when I take my foot off the pedal, when I'm sewing, the needle goes into the fabric and the foot comes up so I can adjust if I need to. So if you have a pivot, put your pivot on. And I'm not going to make this into a big math project. I'm just going to come in so far this way, and you're going to ask me how much. So hold on, because I just kind of eyeball it. So I'm going to come in about 2.5. I'm going to sew this side. I'm going to come in 2.5 on the other side, and then I'm just going to eyeball where the middle is. It's a potato bag. I don't think anybody's going to really care. When you give them this as a gift, or a couple of them as a gift, they'll just be so excited to have it. And I can see that I'm not ready to sew because I don't have any thread in my needle. So let me quickly do that. And I didn't bring my trash can. So when you have a machine that either has the side over here on the side of your machine, the pull down lever, or you have the little lever for threading, you always want to make sure you do needle up and down to make sure that the needle is in the proper place. If you have the kind of machine that threads and the threader button is way over on your right near your screen, then you don't have to worry about that. But I try to remind people. And in some cases, some threaders, you have to have your foot down when you thread. This is the Baby Lock Aventura, the Aventura 2, either one. Because they have pivot, the mechanism inside allows that foot to move kind of up and down when the threader works. It's one of those technology things. Okay, so I'm on 3.0 for my stitch length. I'm using a thread color that works for here. I'm going to be a little lighter so you can see it. I do not. Oh, geez, look at that! See, I almost sewed in my little loop. That would have been funny. So I'm going to go measure over about 2.5 inches. And when you're doing this later on your own, if you want to draw a line down, you can. I just kind of pick a point over here. So I'm going to pick the edge of my plate. That looks like a good spot. So I can watch my fabric over here, the edge of my needle plate. And I'm going to lock at the beginning. It's not necessary because it's going to get sewn over. But I know sometimes when we move fabric around in that, a couple of our threads will come undone. So if you want to avoid that, you can do that. Let me see. Denise, you want to see my machine more? You're coming from above, so it's hard to see anything. So see my threaders right here on the side, push down. Okay, how's that? So I'm looking here. If you need to put something there, you know, a little piece of sticky note, a couple of sticky notes or something to guide yourself. And I'm just going to go. Hopefully my hands are out of your way. Now don't get ahead of me and do the other side because I have something to say. And hold on to your fabric right to the end. Okay, when I get to the end, if I want to put another lock, I'm just holding I have a lock button, and then I'm just going to hit my scissors. So now I'm going to go to the other side, but here's where I ended. I'm going to turn around, and I'm going to come down this way. So I went up, now I'm coming down. And again, I'm going to line up with the edge of my needle plate. I'm going to do a lock. So you'll see I hold my fabric this way. And I think I've taught a lot of you this. So those of you that I haven't, I learned this years and years ago from someone that worked in like the garment making factory kind of places. And what you do is you have your palm with your thumb up facing you, and you put the I can't, I have to stand up. Hold on. You put your thumb in, palms facing towards the machine, and then you're going to turn it. So now my palm is facing towards the machine, and I will move along with this. I'm not going to keep moving my hand unless I stop. But this keeps these two fabrics at the end, whether you're putting strips together or whatever, it keeps them together to end together better than if I pinned it. And again, I'm hanging on to the end. And when I get to the end, I'm going to do a locking stitch and cut it. So now I'm going to do down the center. So I'm just kind of eyeball looking. So here's my thread stitch here and here. So I'm just going to kind of put my presser foot is in between the two. And you know, this isn't your prom dress. We don't have to be exact, but we can be close. Again, I'm going to lock it. I'm still holding my fabric the same way. You can't see it. It's not going to shift any now because it's got these two seams going. So if you can put your hands just like this, because my hand out here is too far away. It needs to be closer to the edge of where I'm stitching. Get to the end, I'm going to lock it again. Cut my thread. Okay, I really wouldn't do much more quilting than that. I wouldn't get carried away with my quilting because it's going in the microwave. So there's one end, there's the middle, there's the other end. Okay, now let's make sure we move our stitch length back to the 2.5, or if your machine was 2.0, whatever your machine is. So I want to just make sure I go back. If you have a Baby Lock or Brother machine, you can see around your width and length and all that will have a black a black box around it. The black box around it means that's your default setting. So if you're not sure, if you don't have a reset button, that's what you would do. When you shut your machine off and turn it back on, it will go back to default anyway. So I'm back to my 2.5. I do that the second I stop sewing, because you know what happens. Okay, so now let me get this. Let me see. I gotta move my machine back again a little bit. There we go. Okay, so we got our quilting done. So now we need to put our lining on. No, we're going to do this next. We need to, let's see, when do we want to put this in? Trying to decide which way I will do this. Let's trying to remember which way I did this. I did this yesterday and I already have forgotten. Let's go ahead and make our loop. Okay. And we're just gonna fold it right sides together. And we're gonna stitch down one side. It was about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Doesn't have to be exact. And we're going to just stitch from one. And again, I'm going to go ahead and lock it, because when I'm turning this, I'm going to be fiddling with the loop. And I'm going to lock it at the other end. And then I'm going to turn this right side out. Now, if you have a tool like this one, can you see this? So in order for this to work, it really likes to have a closed end to work with. So I'm going to just run a little stitch across here, and I'll show you what I mean. So when I use this turning tool, I'm going to put the tube part, and you could actually use a straw. If you get one of those big straws like they make for milkshakes, that works good too. And then see how I can be up against the end. So now I'm up against that sewn end. So I'm going to take the side that's curved, and I'm just going to stuff this down in. And I'm going to hold it and just take this off and see how it comes out this side. So now I can pull this down, and I want to make sure that I've got this end all the way open. So I'm going to work from the other end of this, which is flatter. This little edge here is going to be in the seam allowance, so it doesn't matter if you don't need to get it perfect. So I'm going to give that a little press. Let me set this aside. And I'm going to give that a little press. What did I do? Oh, I bring my pressing mat back. So now it's nice and flat. And see how this little end isn't pushed all the way through? It's fine, because this will be out in the seam allowance. I just want to feel in there. So if I feel too much fabric in there, like too much is bunched up in that corner, otherwise I wouldn't bother. I just don't want to have a big bunch there. Okay, so now we have our loop ready. I'll set that right there. We've got our fabric is quilted. We're going to add our lining on. I'm going to measure down. I'm trying to decide which is easier for you, to do it after or not. Now we're going to go ahead. We're going to do it this way. We're going to go ahead and put our lining right side down. So right side to right side. With muslin, that doesn't matter. And we're going to make sure it's even because we're going to just stitch across this top. So my batting is always on the bottom. And I'm just going to do 1/4 inch, a little more. Doesn't have to be exact as long as it's nice and straight. I'm going to fold this up a bit so it doesn't drag behind when I'm stitching. I'm going to do a little lock. I'm trying to do this straight and stand up at the same time. So I'm just following near the edge of my presser foot. And I'm trying to keep my fabric nice and straight here as well. I don't need it to have a tug of war with itself. And I'm going to lock at this end. And cut the thread. I'm going to smooth it down. I'm working in kind of a small area here. I'm going to smooth it down and get it straightened out to do the other end. So I want to make sure I don't have some big bubble here in the middle. So I'm smoothing it down. And they were the same size, so they should be just about the same size still. They don't have to be perfect. So see how this is all not perfect? That's okay. It does that between you handling it and the quilting and so forth. And I'm going to do the same thing again about a 1/4 inch or about the edge of my foot. I don't want to go too skinny. I'm going to lock it again. Oh, cut my thread. And I'm going to give this a little press because you can see how you're a little bit wrinkly sometimes. So let's just give that a good press, and that just sets the thread into the fabric. And you see how it's nice and smooth now. And do both ends. Okay. Once I have that done, I'm going to turn it right side out. Alberta, you haven't seen this kind of... So mine, and you can see how yellow mine is. Mine's really old. So it came as a set of 3, and that blue one, another one came in there. I'm assuming you can still get them. So I'm going to ahead and turn this right side out. And I want you to turn it right side out, but don't bring it up like this. I want you to open it like this. And I want you to have the underneath seam a little ways away, because I want you to press this nice and flat. And that will help when you bring this up to be this way. Because you did this flat, you won't get that tunnel where both fabrics come up, but the seam is way down inside. And if you've got steam, use it. And then I can just flip it over and do the other one. I'm not ironing out and making creases in the end of my fabric. I'm just staying right in where the seam is. And the other seam is over here, so I'm not interfering with that. And you can see when you iron it, how it flattens that down so much better. And I'm just going to let it cool for a second. It's time to take a sip of our tea, water, whatever. Sometimes if you pick your fabric up and it hasn't cooled off a bit, it's like the problems all come back again. So now I'm going to fold it. So one side has your main fabric, the other side is your lining fabric. I'm going to turn this and I'm going to press it again. And when I press it, I want to make sure that see how you can see the lining fabric? I want to make sure I can't see the lining fabric. I don't want it like a 1/2 inch to the back because that would make the other end not right. I'm going to give that a little press. Okay, out hot. Now, before I do the other end, I'm going to sew a top stitch across here. So if you have a top stitch needle in, that's fine. And the Microtech, that will work fine because we're top stitching with just plain sewing thread. So either one is good. So I'm going to come maybe a 1/4 inch down and stitch across. If you want to go back to having the 3.0 stitch to match this stitch, you can do that. If you're afraid that you'll forget, then leave it at mine's at 2.5. Make it easy on yourself. And this time on my foot, let me show you my foot because I know a lot of you have a foot similar to this. So here's my foot. This is my J foot. J foot on a baby lock, and brother, it's an A foot on Janome, I believe. But you see, normally I might want to run along this edge as my guide. Well, this time I'm going to run along the inside edge. Let me see if I can point with something. I'm going to run along the inside edge right here because I'll be too far away from the top if I run this edge. So I'm going to run along here. I always try to pick some kind of visual place to follow to keep my sewing as straight as I can. I'm not that good of a straight sewer, but so I used little visual aids to help me out. So I'm going to use that inside of that edge. So my fabric is not out at this edge. I don't know, can you see right here? Let me, if I can zoom in. I'm not sure if it'll zoom into that. Yes, I can't get to that spot. But if you put your fabric in, you can see that your fabric edge is on the inside of the, I'm going to call that the toe of the foot, the part that's coming out. So I'm going to lock it, and then I'm going to stitch across, and I want to make sure that I'm not letting this fabric come so I can see it on the front as best I can. And it's going to be a little extra noise to it because you're going through that double batting. This thread's bothering me. You're going through that double batting right there. And I'm not going to take the time to trim that out. And I'm going to lock at the end. Someone was asking what these are called. Sometimes they're called a tube turner, though there are different ones that are tube turners. I'll try to find what it is and post it up to Facebook, and maybe if I can find a link for you, because I'll double check. I've had these so long that, and look, I don't have I don't have the original covered. Now see, now that would have been handy. Then I could have told you. So here we are, and we've just stitched across. I'm just going to give it a little press because pressing makes not perfect sewing look better. And now I'm going to go to the other end, and I should be able to just lay this down so it's nice and smooth. And I'm going to give this a little press. And I would steam it pretty well because that will help that batting flatten out a bit. So see, there's no bump or anything there where the batting is. And normally, again, when you press, just let it cool off for a second. You don't have to be, everything doesn't have, you don't have to sew as fast as your microwave is going to make this potato. How's that? I'm just going to fold this up again so I don't have it dragging all over the place. I'm going to set my foot up the same way I did before. So my fabric is on the inside of the toe of my foot. I'm going to lock it. I gotta find my pedal. It's like a foot away from me. Oh, now see, I'm stuck in that one spot. So I'm gonna lift my needle up. I'm gonna lift my foot up and just help myself along just for that little bit. And fast sewing doesn't make good sewing. I'm going a little faster than I normally would only because we're in class. And while I'm talking, you can catch up on your sewing, so you don't have to zip along real fast. And when I get to the end again, I'm going to lock it. If you don't have a lock button, then you would just stitch back 3 and then forward 3 again. And I'm going to give this a press. So I just have to ask you, Rhonda, are you keeping up with the pressing? That's a joke between Rhonda and I because she once said that if she knew how much ironing there was in quilting, she never would have started. But she likes it now, so it's okay. When you're pressing for a project you're working on as you go, it's not like having to press a bunch of shirts at one time. So here we have what we have so far, okay? So we have a finished end at the top and a finished end at the bottom. So now, depending on the fabric you have, you got to decide what's the top and what's the bottom right now. So we're going to come down and fold this down about 3 inches. And I didn't bring my ruler in my studio. So I'm going to measure on my mat. And again, doesn't have to be a perfect 3 inches. So this one works well. And I have, probably 2.5. So let's do this. Let's make it easy on you. Let's measure down 3 inches from the top. And we're going to put our loop on. Okay, so we're going to fold our loop in half. Raw edges and that edge that I stitched are out here. My fold is on the inside. And I'm going to measure down 3 inches and I'm going to put that at the end of the 3 inches. And I'm going to put a pin in it just for you because normally I wouldn't. And I'm pinning over here out of the way. Okay. But I'm going to stitch mine now. Oh, and you know what I want to do? Because I got that little seam, I'm going to come out past. So see, can you see how I'm a little out past? Okay, so when I put a loop on for myself, when I do it, I always, if they call for a shorter loop and they want you to bring it like to the edge of your fabric, just make it a little longer. I like to go out past the edge so that when I fold this all up, I can still see that it's there and I can see where it is. So I'm just going to put a pin in it for a second and I'm going to stitch this and I'm going to stitch it. Let me get another pin. I'm going to stitch it up close to the edge of this fabric because I want this stitching to be inside of my seam allowance. So if my seam allowance is here, 1/4 inch, I want to be a little back. Okay? You don't have to start at this edge where the two pieces are because it's a little harder. We're just doing this to hold it and then we won't have to use a pin. So I'm going to come in a little ways and I'm going to stop a little short just to hold my loop in place. And I'm not going to bother even blocking the stitch. Okay, so, well, that was a bad job. So I'm inside of, so I didn't need to come out to this edge. I don't need to come out to this edge. This is just holding this on. And oops, sorry. Outside of the seam allowance. Okay, so we've got our loop on. We can take the pin out now. Let me just check to see if there's any questions before we go on. Okay, so Alberta, you found the name of it, Turn It All. Okay. Oh, and it's made in the USA. There you go. So, so they do still make it. That's a good thing. The turners I was talking about. Okay, so we've got everything done to this point. You've got your loop in. Make sure you take that pin out. Another reason you don't want to use pins on this project, because if you leave a pin in, a metal pin with a plastic end on it, and you put it in the microwave, what do you think is going to happen? It's going to be sparks and melting, and the potato will be no good. So now I'm going to fold down the top even with this. See when I fold? So that gives me my fold line without having to measure. Okay? So I want to fold this down. And then I'm going to take my end and I'm going to bring it up. And I want to make sure that I'm not all wrinkly in between. Okay? And I don't think in this case we need to bring it, you don't need to bring it all the way up to this edge because there's nothing's going to spill out. It's a potato. So we just have to be able to get the potato in and out. So see, I'm not all the way to the edge on that one. But we do want to have some overlap. So I don't want to be way down here. See, this end is right here. I don't want to have that little distance. I want a little more than that. So, and every time I pick it up, I got to make sure I've got it right. So we got to get this nice and smooth and straight across. Okay. Then we're going to bring this one up, and I'm going to be about, my seam stitching is about 1 inch from this folded edge, if that gives you a little. I want to look here. See how I've got plenty of overlap there? So even if I want to be right here, if I want to be down a little bit, if I feel that I've got, depending on your machine, if I've got a lot of bulk here and then I add the bulk of this seam to it, then come right here. Do you see how my seam ends where the loop begins? And just try to be as straight as you can. Now you can use some clips here. So I'm just going to put some clips in. When I get to this end, I'm going to put my finger in here, and I want to make sure that I don't have a fold of fabric in there. So I'm pushing it that way so that I know that that fabric's not folded up inside. Then I'm going to come around to the other side and do the same thing. I want to make sure everything's laying nice and flat. I'm going to clip right near where all this bulk is. All right, I want to make sure I look on my other side to make sure when I do my seam, and I'm going to do not quite, so what would it be, about 3/8, not quite a half, but a little more than a quarter. So if this was too high up, I need to make sure that all my fabrics get caught. So I want to make sure these guys are all up there together. Okay? If you're too far off, you just have to open it up, or you can leave it this way. Get your rotary cutter mat ruler out and just give it a little sliver trim to make sure everybody's close together. Remember, my loop's way out here, and so I know my loop is there and I'm good. So now I'm going to stitch down, going towards this, so I don't have to worry about this flipping up on me. Okay? And we're going to go 3 forward, 3 back. So what I do, because this has got a little thickness to it, and I can't remember this one I did fix. I think when I was talking, I didn't push my inside fabric so that I'm pushing away that way. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to seam about right here. And again, if you did a whole 1/2 inch, that'd be fine because you can trim it off. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start stitching about right here. I'm going to go forward just 1 or 2, but then I'm going to go back to the edge and then forward again. That way I don't have to fight with the edge with my foot. So I'm maybe a 1/4 inch in onto my fabric. I'm going to stitch a couple forward. I just consider that the needle, when the needle's in the fabric, that's like my third hand. It's helping me hold everything. Now I'm going to hold my back button, and I'm going to stitch back to almost the edge. If I fall off the edge, which happens, I'm just going to lift my foot up a little bit and make sure I'm on the edge. Now that I've sewn it, that edge will be easy to go to stitch on. And I'm using the edge of my foot again. Oh, I gotta move my. When I get to the other end, I'm going to go close to the edge, and I have 2 choices. I'm going to go 1 more stitch, so I'm close to the edge. I can back stitch if my needle's in the fabric, or I can just turn this right around and go forward. And if you want extra strength here where this opening is tugged on, we can stitch right across that again. And then here, I'll do 3 forward, 3 back after I've passed that area. Oh, and then I'm standing up, so I'm heavier foot apparently when I'm standing up. And lock it and end. Okay? So we started down here, a little ways in, went back and forward, came down to here, to the edge, have your needle in, turn your fabric around, we stitched back, and you don't have to be exactly on top. I wasn't exactly on top. Back, and then do your locking here. And that gives this edge a little more strength because you've stitched there twice. Let me see if anybody has any questions. Oh, Deb, you wanted me to refold it again? Okay, so we folded down. The fold here on the other side is exactly where we put the loop. If you didn't put the loop, I folded down 3 inches. You do this, the top is always first because that's what's going to show on the outside. Then we flipped up and came about 1 inch. I used my stitching line, and I was about 1 inch from this edge on my stitching line. Okay? So now this time, we have to work a little harder because we can't come this way. I don't want to, we could fold over this way, but I like to keep an eye on what's happening here. And sometimes you're just going to have to deal with this. So today we're going to deal with whether this flips up on us or not. So we're going to start the same way we did before. And now that I opened this, I want to make sure I go back in and just make sure that fabric is sitting up in there without a crease in it. Okay, so we're going to start a little bit in, go back and forward, and then we're going to carefully go here and then down. And remember, we're going to, so while we're here, we're going to come over, we're going to go back, and then back again. So we go over this a couple times where that stress is, okay? I'm lining up with the edge of my foot again. I've come onto my fabric a little way. I'm not going to lock it here because when I go back and forth, it's going to automatically lock it. So I'm going to come forward a couple of stitches. And then I'm going to go back until I'm at the edge. Okay, I fell off the edge, so I'm just going to make sure I put my needle up, put myself back onto the fabric, because that does happen. And I'm going to start stitching. And I'm holding down so this doesn't fold up. Because I have pivot, when I stop, my foot comes up. So if you don't have pivot, stop, put your foot up so that you can lay that, that join, that edge here, nice and flat under your presser foot. And remember, I'm going to come down a little ways past it. So let me see, I'm not, here we go. So I've come down a little ways past this edge. I'm going to make sure my needle is in my fabric, my foot is up, and when you have pivot, that's automatically. I'm just going to turn around, and I'm going to go back over, and I'll probably stop maybe a ½ inch from this edge. Again, if you have pivot, you just turn, but if you don't have pivot, make sure your needle's in the fabric, lift your foot, and turn it back around. Now you don't have to worry about this flipping up because it's stitched down, so we can stitch down to the end. When I get down to this end, I'm still going to do my back stitch. And I'm going to come forward a couple and then just, that's my locking, and then just cut. Okay? So we're done, but what we want to do is we'll trim this up a little bit. So you can use your rotary cutter and so forth, or you can use the scissors. And I'm just going to come in, and let me do a little so I can show you my distance. So it's like probably a scant quarter, maybe, yeah, around there. You don't want to get too close. You don't want to do that 1/8 because it makes like almost feels like cording going across. And it doesn't have to be perfect. And while I'm here, I'm going to snip this corner. See? I'm going to snip this corner. See that? I'm going to go to the other side. So see, it's starting to look neater already. So now, remember over here, I had that excess loop fabric. Oh, I got to do it from this side. It's easier. Now, I have some spots here where I came in probably a little too far. I'm going to just cut this. That's where all that bulk is. I'm going to snip that corner. And I'm going to snip this corner. I'm staying away from those stitches though, see? Oh, there goes my best press. Okay. Now I came in a little too close to this edge, and normally I probably would come back and stitch in a little further, but I'm just going to keep on going. Okay, so now we're going to turn this right side out. We got to make sure we poke out those corners. So you get your corner turner, pointer, chopstick, whatever, get in those corners. Okay. And let me get my scissors out of the way. I'm going to give it a little press. So I'm pressing those seams down. Give it a little steam if you have it. I don't really need to press the bottom fold. I'm just pressing down that bulk because that will help get rid of some of that bulk. Or the look of the bulk. Okay? So you could be done at this point. Now this one, I stitched all the way around. When I stitched all the way around, so let's open, so you know we have a raw edge seam inside here. And the potatoes aren't going to care if you have a raw edge seam. Oh, look, I did my thing on the other side of this one. And in here, I don't. And that's because I stitched around outside of my little seam area all the way around. Okay? So let's go ahead and do that. So I don't want to start in the middle of a heavily fabric area because I've got extra here. So I'm going to start over here. Now I went all the way around. So I'm going to start down. I don't like to start in the corner. I'm going to start about right here. And I'm going to be stitching. I can feel my seam. Can you almost see it there? See how I can run my edge along that? So I'm going to stitch as close to that, just outside of that, all the way around. I don't need to lock when I start because when I come around again, I'm going to come a little bit over that stitching. So I just have to keep an eye on it, because I trimmed it a little, it's pretty close to using this same edge again. And this time I can go change my stitch length back to the 3 if I want to, so it looks more like this quilting. And stitch around. And you're going to take your time. Now I got to be careful when I get to this flip of this lid, the little lid here. I want to make sure it stays down. So if I need to stop and use my pivot a couple times and stop or lift my foot, make sure if you lift your foot, your needle's down in the fabric. And I'm holding it down over here. And I'm going to come to the edge. Almost again where I can feel this. Now this is just a fold, so you're not going to feel a seam, but you can, you've been feeling along the other part, and you want to be about that same distance. So when you turn it, I turned it and I still have fabric out past my foot. So I need to come a stitch or two further. This is when your dual petal, if you have the dual petal set for one stitch, comes in handy. So when I turned it, I was at this edge. And now I'm coming down here. This is going to be the thicker part through here. I'm trying to stay out of that thickness. So I'm coming down, and I'm going to take my time, and I'm going to do a stitch and turn and see. Now I need one more. Now I can turn, and again, if you don't have pivot, put your needle into the fabric, lift your foot up. So your needle will be holding, that'll be your third hand. Your needle is holding your fabric in place so it doesn't slip away. And again, I want to be outside of that, just outside of that seam. I can use my little tag to help me if I need a little help pushing along, because it's a little thick area. Again, I'm going to stop. Turn so my fabric is at this edge. Make sure everything's nice and flat. Slow down, I get to this end. Because I got to pay attention because I need to line up with the threads that I started at. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clip that starting thread out of my way. So now my eye is looking at that stitching so that I can line up with it. I only want to go over it a little bit, and I'm going to lock in place so it doesn't have a big show up. And then I can just trim my threads on the back because I locked it. And you have your bag. So while you're finishing up, I'm going to look and see, trim out your threads. I'm going to look and see if there's any questions. Let's see. Okay. Dab your handles on the inside, and that's easy. Don't put your handle on this way. It has to face and go in over the fabric. Or is it inside here? I'm not sure quite what you mean when you did inside. So you'll have to send me a picture so I can see what you did. Well, they'll never know, Deb. Just tell them it doesn't have a handle. Yeah, Christine has a good answer. She said the handle so the potatoes can hang on while they're getting steamed. So there's a quick and easy project. Another great gift. So potatoes go in. And this is stitched well enough, especially if you go around, to throw into the wash machine. So does anybody have any questions on this? Deb, you can put that on your continuing wall of shame if you want to. No, it won't work because it's on the inside. You can't see it. Just use it. You'll be fine. It's not your prom dress, remember. Okay? So is everybody all set with this one? Okay. Excuse me. So I know a lot of you ladies have embroidery machines. And you may decide to get all fancy and say, oh, well, I can put someone's initials on it. Okay. You have to use cotton thread. Your embroidery thread is poly or rayon. Most everyone is poly. So before you get all excited about doing something like that and getting all fancy, remember it has to be cotton thread. So keep in mind that sewing thread is 50 weight. Embroidery thread is 40 weight. It's a little bit heavier. So if you decide you want to put someone's name on it or initial on it, I probably just let that thought go for now. That's just more stitching, more cotton in your microwave. If you want to give it a try it on fabric before you put it together, see how that cotton thread looks with whatever font you're using, because it's a tad thinner. And it may be just fine. Oh, Deb says her wall of shame is getting full. That's okay. We all have one. Okay, so now this one, how much time do we have? We all out of time? No, we're good. So this one, did anybody guess what's in here? Of course, I puffed it up, so now it makes a difference. Because, you know, you can put like tortilla shells and stuff in these. So I did this one. This one's made different because this is, check it out. And you see in there, popcorn in the microwave. Is everybody excited? I'd say, can I have a show of hands, but I don't get any. Is everybody excited about that? I was. Now, might I say, don't put your butter in, okay? Not a good idea. So this time, I think I told some of you to have a second set of fabrics ready. So now this time, no loop, no batting. Just fabric. So I'm going to take a second to clean up one mess, because what I will do is I will cut this video into two sections, one with the potato bag and one with the popcorn bag, and have them separate. So if you want to do the popcorn bag later on, you don't have to work your way through the potato bag to get to it. So just give me a minute. You guys get your sewing areas all cleaned up. And Lynn guessed it, popcorn, correctly this morning. So Lynn, I have to give you a special prize. I don't know what, but, and it smells so good. But it's yesterday's popcorn. I had to not eat it. Do you know how hard popcorn and butter, that's my favorite snack. I had to not eat it. You have no idea what I had to sacrifice for you girls and guys, just so I could show you popcorn. Potato bag. Started about 5 minutes in the microwave. Remember your potatoes. You wash your potatoes. Don't dry them. They need to be wet. When I put a paper towel, and I don't wrap it, I just put it on the paper towel, fold it over, stick it in the bag. And then I send it up to the neighbor to do. Okay? So you could take up to 7, 8, 10 minutes, but you need to keep an eye on it. The nice thing with the handle is because it is hot when it comes out, is you can grab onto this. Now that's a good idea right there. Those potatoes are going to be exceptionally hot when you take them out, so be careful. Okay, so let's have a moment to clean up, get readjusted here, get one bag out of the way, bring the other bag in. I guess I can't drink my tea without everybody knowing it, can I? Okay, let's make a popcorn bag, microwave popcorn bag. 100% cotton fabric, 100% cotton thread. It's the only two things we're using. No batting, no filling, no nothing. 2 fabrics. Your outside pretty fabric and your lining fabric. I use muslin. Muslin is 100% cotton. And it's cheaper to buy. Okay. This one, I'll have to go back and put a little tag up for the other one. This is the same measurement. I think it was 12 inches by 20 inches. You could make it whatever size you want to a certain extent. You aren't going to make a 3-pound bag of popcorn in here. I will say that when I made popcorn, I used less. Let me see. I filled it to half. That was too much. I dumped half. I would almost say a quarter cup of popcorn kernels. And no more than 3 minutes, because you know popcorn kernels will start burning but at that point anyways. So try a quarter cup of kernels and set your microwave for 3 minutes. I know some have a popcorn setting, but stay right there, because you know popcorn, the minute it stops to pop, or a minute before it stops to pop, you want to stop it. So what we're going to do this time is we're going to sew all the way around and leave an opening. So when I'm going to leave an opening, I use 3 pins. My first pin is where I'm going to start. So that would be to the right. My other 2 pins are going to be where I stop. If I just pinned all the way around, how would I know where I'm stopping? So I always, no matter what I'm doing, when I need to know if I'm going to stop, I have 2 pins together. And I've got them about, I don't know, 3 inches from each other, from the other pins. Okay? So my starting point, my ending point, my opening, well, it's about 4 inches. Doesn't have to be a lot because there's no batting or anything to this. So 1/4 inch or so seam, we're going to go all the way around. We are going to lock it here, and we are going to lock it here at the end, because when you're pulling something through, pardon my neighborhood, when you're pulling something through, you're tugging on these edges. Alberta asked why not batting. Well, the potatoes were wet and they're going to steam, and the popcorn's just going to pop. So it didn't need any. That was my take of how to do it. So we're going to start here, 3 forward, 3 back, and go about 1/4 inch. Or if you want to use the edge of your foot, you can do that. So I'm taking my pin out where I'm starting. I'm going to go 3 forward, 3 back, and if you counted to 4, it's okay. There's no backup police here. I'm going to stitch down, and I'm not perfectly lined up. I'm okay with that. This is my popcorn bag, not my prom dress. I'm going to come down until I'm about 1/4 inch. This one, you have to learn to gauge it as you go. So see, if I turn this now, can you see how much fabric I've got over there? So I didn't go far enough. I'm just going to go back, and I'm going to go another stitch. Again, if you got the dual pedal, comes in real handy to give you just 1 stitch. You got to be real light on your foot pedal. So I just use my toes if I only need to go a little ways. And I'm going to head down the other side. And again, using the edge of my foot. I'm going to slow down when I get to this edge. I'm still hanging on. I'm going to get close to what I think is 1/4. And as time goes by and you're sewing more, you'll get used to getting closer. I turned it, and it wasn't close enough, so I just turned it back and did 1 more stitch. I want to make sure, stab myself with the needles. I want to make sure my fabric's nice and flat, and I'm doing my little hand holding. Oh, I can smell that popcorn's over to the right of me now. Bag's open. I feel like I'm at the movies. I'm sewing at the movies. That's what I feel like. Coming down to this end again. Needles down, foot's up. I'm going to turn. Oh, I guessed a good one this time. It feels so good when you do that. If you wanted to pin all that, I guess you could. I'd like some of you to learn not to sew with so many pins, because I find the more I pin, the worse I get. All right, I have to move that popcorn because the fan's blowing it right at me. Then I dropped my pin cushion, for Pete's sakes. Then I dropped my scissors. Jeez whiz. Okay. See what happens if you stop? Does this happen to you? Coming down to my last end. You're better off to stop sooner than later. If you stop later, like you go right off the edge, just come back and come down this way. Now remember the 2 pins. If I see 2 pins, I'm gonna stop. Okay, so I can take my pins out. I could sew closer to them, but I put my finger right where they were so I know where to stop. Okay, once I get to that part, I'm going to go back 3, forward 3, and cut my thread. Now you know what we have to do. We're going to do a little pressing. We sewed seams. You can see how wavy this is. I know it's your popcorn bag and it's not your prom dress, but we got to make a little effort. Oh, I was trying to figure out what the lump was. Okay, so see how much nicer that looks. And again, when you're doing this on your own, let that cool for a minute. Or what I sometimes do is I just bring this other edge up while that one's cooling. And I just iron this seam. I'm hooking into everything here. Okay? Don't forget your sides. And again, you'd let it cool for a second or two. Okay, so while we're ironing, we're going to go around and find where our opening is. And we're gonna fold this seam open. So that means I'm taking, this is where the stitching is here and where my fingers are. I'm going to fold that all down, and then I'm going to come across that part that is open so that it evenly goes across with that seam. Okay, and you would let that cool a minute. I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to do the same thing again. I swear I can't stop smelling popcorn. Okay, I'm going to put my fingers out where the stitching is to start turning my seam towards me, which is open, and then work my way into the middle, and it should be even with the other side. And I'll show you in a second. Okay, so when we look here, okay, and you'd normally let that cool. While that's cooling, we're going to trim those edges. And all I've got is my giant scissors. So the corners. So I'm going to trim that corner, not too close to the stitching, out right there. And that just keeps all that bulk out of that corner. Okay? And you can see mine. See, my everything isn't lined up perfect, but it's a popcorn bag. Okay, so now we're nice and cooled off. So we're going to go back to our opening. I know it's here somewhere, right here. And I'm going to reach in. I'm just putting my fingers in. I don't need to put my whole hand in. But I want to go to the furthest away corner. I'm going to grab that corner, and I'm pushing with my thumb and pushing that out through. And then everybody else can kind of follow along. It always works best when you're turning, most always. If you go to the furthest away edge and turn that first. And then I'm going to find each of my corners. Now, when you poke these corners out with your little pokey tool of whatever you're using, hopefully not your scissors, you got to be a little more careful because there's nothing between you and the end of that fabric stitching. So in this case, I just used my finger. That looks actually pretty good. I seem to have like 8 million threads that I've picked up somewhere along the way. So this corner, oh, there we go. So make sure you do all 4. If you need to use your tool, use it. I know it's not your prom dress, but a little effort never hurt. Did I miss a corner? I did. When I poke in the corner, I get between the fabric. So my fabric is on this side and my other seam allowance and fabric is on this side. So I'm pushing the fabric. I'm not pushing the seam, if that kind of makes sense to you. Okay. So we're going to do a little press. Now, this doesn't have any batting in it, so sometimes you don't have that same issue with the edges. But if you do, like we did before, I'm going to open this up a little bit so that I can press in here on that seam and get that nice and flat. Try not to press too much into the fabric and make a crease, though if you do, we can press that out. So see how nice and flat that is? So when you snap it back, you see how there's no indent? Let me see if I can. All right. Can you see the indent there? Can you see how the stitching is down in a little bit? And you see how here it's not? Does that make sense to you? So again, I'm going to do the other end. I lost my corner there. And try not to have like wrinkly stuff underneath, because then you just wrinkly fabric underneath, because then you just iron in wrinkles. So who wants to do that? And get as close to the edge as you can. And again, you'd let it cool a minute. But see how, you'll see it in person when you do it, how nice and flat that lays. And while that's laying nice and flat, I can give that a press. And if you have a corner that's not pretty, find your opening and take the time to go in. And just fix that corner a little better. Okay, I'm going to go back and do my other end. Remember, I have already flattened this. And you'll see the difference now between this and this over here, as you're looking at it right in front of you if you're stitching along now, or when you do stitch along. Okay, so now I'm going to come down the sides. So I'm just going to, I'm just grabbing each fabric separate and just pulling it apart. Okay, and I'm trying to make sure that underneath is nice and flat. And see how flat that is. Now I'm coming by, excuse me, where the opening is. And now look when I lay that flat. Here's that opening. Look how nice that looks. So if you were hand stitching this shut, that would be pretty good. But we're not. We're not doing no hand stitching today. Not for the popcorn. But you might as well use the same method because look how nice that looks. Right now, you can't tell where the opening is along here, and that's what you want. And I'm going to turn this because I only have a little tiny pressing area here. And I might not be able to get up to the edge, and that's okay, because once this is all flat, it should just keep going the whole way around. And before I press this flat like I did the ends, I'm going to go to the other side, only because with moving it all around and stuff, and opening and closing it and all that, you don't want to unpress what you pressed, if you know what I mean. Again, making sure that it's nice and flat. If you need to pull your fabric a little bit to make sure there's no fold there, do that. Just take your time. And I'm going to turn this so I can get my little iron up to the end. Okay, and again, you'd let yours cool a little bit. I'm just going to grab both my ends and just snap it and see how nice that sits. Now, see, I got a little crease there, and if I have trouble getting out, I just put some best press or starch there, or you usually can just give it a little steam. And I'm just going to come down now and make sure it's all pressed nice and flat. I'm going to do the other side. I don't want to see any of my lining fabric. If I see a little bit here, I can reach under, grab my lining fabric separate. So I've got a hold of my lining fabric, and I'm holding it as I kind of push the top fabric a little bit. So sometimes it needs just a little help. Now I'm coming by my opening, so I want to make sure that my top fabric, my back fabric isn't showing through. So if you need to adjust anything, you can do that. Mine decided to peek out. So again, I'm pulling the fabric from underneath my lining fabric. I'm holding on to it, and I'm just pushing the iron that way, and I'm holding the lining fabric that way. I don't want to do left and right because you might be standing differently or sitting differently. Okay, so let me just stop for a second, see if we have any questions. Yes, Denise, your potatoes are going to be like in their own little bed, their own little cushy bed. Okay, so any questions before we continue on? Okay, so we're going to do the same. Oh, I got a big crease there. So I don't want to sew a crease in. And I'm just getting kind of creasy because I'm working in this smaller area. Okay, so we got to again determine who's the top and who's the bottom. So we're going to do right side is facing up. We're going to put this down We can do it about the, let's see, let's do it. Did I do mine? Yeah, about 2 inches down. But this time I need to come all the way up to the end. I don't want any popcorn kernels getting away from me. So can you see? 2 inches down. And this edge is all the way up. Maybe just a barely below the back. Okay? And then you can clip it. Oh. You want to make sure that these edges is not a crease there underneath. Okay, and we're just going to sew down each side. So about a 1/4 inch, a little more seam allowance. I'm going to use the edge of my foot to go by. In this case, there's no batting or anything, so this is a pretty flat area. So I should be able to start at the edge. If I don't want to, I can just come in a little ways. Whoop. Take a couple stitches forward. Then take stitches back till I get to the back to the edge. And then come forward. Now this one, I didn't really go over this edge twice because it's not the same as wrestling potatoes into your bag. You're just going to open it, take your measuring thing, just dump it in. You don't have to open it wide to get like a potato that's, as big as that Idaho potato truck in. And when I get to the other end, I'm going to go to the edge. I'm going to go back 3. Well, I went back about 8, but that's okay. And forward 3. And I don't mind, as a rule, I don't like to cut at my edge. So I might go back a little extra, come back like halfway, and then cut. So my threads aren't hanging at the edge. I don't know why that bothers me, but apparently it does. So I came back to about here, and then I came forward to here and cut. See? Now that I see those, I have to trim them. Okay? So now we're going to do the other side. Now this time we're starting from this edge. Remember that humpy bumpy stuff? So I'm going to start a little ways down. I'm going to go back, come forward. Okay? No, there's no sense in trying to prove that you can start at an edge, and another day I can show you with your foot how you can get around that. But for the most part, just start a little ways in, and I always take a couple stitches forward. That just gives me a needle as my third hand. Then I'm going to hold my back button. I'm going to go back to the edge and then forward. Whoop. So I got caught a little bit. If you do, lift your foot. Just lift it a tad. Don't lift it all the way up, just to help it along. And then do your back. I almost went right off the edge. And then forward a couple and cut. So again, I don't cut at my edge. Now, now we didn't need to close that opening. I don't even know where it is because it's in the seam here now. It doesn't matter. So before we turn it right side out, we need to box the bottom. And that'll be the last thing we do. So we want to make sure that we have a even distance on each side of this. And we want to make sure that, let me see. So if we take this part, let's do this. Let's do a an ironing right here to make a fold, and that'll help you out. So now, when I do this, my seam here should be in line with that crease I just made. You see how that crease comes right up through the middle? So I'm gonna feel with my little fingers and see, I can feel, can you see yeah, you can see it. See how there's a little bump that's lining up right with my crease? And that's the bump of the seam, okay? I'm gonna measure across, and I didn't bring my marking pencils here. I'm gonna measure, I'm gonna put the end, the very tip of my V on the line, and I'm gonna measure, so you can either use a ruler or your eyeball. I'm gonna use this because I don't have a ruler, but I have this with me. So I'm gonna measure 1.5 inches, and I'm just gonna use my pencil and just make that line across. You see that? So I can either stitch this right now. Well, we stitch it now because it's easier. Otherwise, you have to put a pin in it to hold right where you are. So we're going to pick it up carefully. And I can see now that I drew a crooked line. So I want my seam going straight with this line, or a line on your ruler. And then I'm going to make sure this, or my ruler, is going straight at 1.5. And I can use a pencil here. It doesn't matter because it's not going to show. Okay? I am going to lock my stitches, the beginning and the end. So I'm going to lock mine in place. You can go 3 forward, 3 back. And I'm just going to stitch right on that line. And when I get to the other end, I'm going to lock again. So I can either lock in place or stitch back 3. Okay? We're going to go to the other side and make sure we still have our crease. And if you don't, iron it again. Open this up. So we want to make sure that when we put our hand in, we don't have the two fronts over on one side. Okay? I'm going to line this up with this crease. Okay? I'm going to, again, make sure my stitching line is going straight with the line of my mat or my ruler. I'm going to go 1.5 inches from this very edge. Mark it, stitch it again. So this time I'll do it, I'll go 3 forward, 3 back. Okay, then go forward across the other side, get to the end. Oh, I gotta go 1 more stitch. And I'm gonna go back 3, or I'm gonna go back about 6. I'm gonna come forward 3. I'm gonna cut it. That way my thread's not hanging on the end. My thread is in here and I can just cut it. Sometimes when you cut threads at the edge, you just can't get in close enough to get them cut. Okay? And we're done. Just have to turn it right side out. We want to make sure we push out that little box area that we have. Okay. And again, you could take this over and press it. I don't have an area enough to do that on my little pressing thing, but it's okay. So I can take it now. Yeah. Give it a little press. The other side, just give it a little press. You notice I didn't cut off this extra part that's left. I don't need to. It's nice and finished. If I cut it, I'd have an unfinished edge. And then I'm just going to turn this. And there's our little popcorn bag. And see, having this boxed edge gives that popcorn room. And Denise, you asked me before about the batting. I totally forgot. The batting, the weight of the batting would be too much for that popcorn to be able to have room to pop up. You know, it would be pressing down too much on it. So there's our little popcorn bag. Open it up, and I say start with a 1/4 cup of popcorn kernels. No oil, no salt, no nothing. This is like air popping, good for you. You can, you know, douse it up after, and then just empty it out. And it's going to be hot, and it only takes a couple minutes. So, were there any questions before we go for today? So today you got 2 bags for the price of 1. How's that? So remember, I will cut this, so cut the video after YouTube has to put it up. Then I have to go back and edit out that first 30 minutes. Then it has to go up again. And then I'll separate the potato bag from the popcorn bag and make it into 2 videos for you. So you'll have that in the future. So does anybody have any questions? And we didn't do too bad for time. We went a little over, but that's okay. Everybody will be, I know you're gonna make a potato for your lunch, and then you're gonna have some popcorn. I know you are. So be sure to post your bags to my Facebook, Miss Loreens Schoolhouse. And please be kind enough to do a thumbs up, subscribe, and all that good stuff to the YouTube channel for me, because that helps me out. Makes me feel good. Makes me feel so I'm not all by myself. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day. And I hope to see your bags all